about IT planning and system selection. So thank you all for attending, and we will stop for questions at a couple of points throughout the webinar, but in the meantime, feel free to use the chat function of the GoToMeeting to ask any questions that you like, and we'll answer those during about halfway through and at the end. So feel free to do that anytime. So without further ado, I'll pass you on to Marcus Harvey, who will talk you through the IT planning process.
Thanks, Matt. And look, first of all, thanks so much to all those people that attended on the webinar on Monday. The Monday's webinar gave everyone an overview of the IT planning and systems selection project. And I know that we've got a couple of new people as well as a number of people that have attended Monday, so I am going to cover a couple of things relatively quickly that we did cover on Monday, just in case people haven't had a chance to have a look at the recorded session. But the vast majority of the session will be content which is all focused on the IT planning part of this project, all about developing an IT plan to get your environment ready for the NDIS. So today we're going to very briefly, as I said, cover the overview. We're going to delve a bit more deeply into the planning component. One of the things as part of participating in this project is that there is a self-assessment that we are asking all participants to undertake, and I'll walk you through that in today's webinar, just so that you can become familiar with it and give you a chance to ask any questions. We're then going to talk about the workshops where we work with each of you to develop the key components of your IT improvement plans. The Tasmanian workshop's coming up rapidly next week. And after that, we're going to talk about what we expect to occur after the workshops. So the actual timeline depends very much on which state you're in, but we'll cover that, and we want to make sure that everyone has a good concept of the key activities if you're participating in the program, and what to expect. All right, so with that, moving on, really quickly, this is the program overview. So you can see here it's got two main components, IT planning and system selection. We're focusing on the IT planning component mostly today, so we're delving into more depth in there. But it's really interesting and great to see. I think the latest stats are about 98% of people that have signed up to both components. So we're working very closely in cooperation with the virtual IT team to make sure that the IT planning and system selection goes hand in hand, because just like everyone that's signed up, what we have found is that most organisations that are preparing for the NDIS need both an IT plan, they need to cover the core elements of their infrastructure, governance, and other areas, as well as spend a fair bit of time selecting systems. So the IT planning process, if you haven't already, I strongly encourage you to register for the project in your state, so that we can start to align dates for the workshops. After you've done that, you will be sent a link to the self-assessment tool to assess your digital capability and identify some of your strengths and some of your potential opportunities to improve your technology environment and prepare for the NDIS. A link to that tool is sent to you once you register for the workshops, and as I mentioned, we will go through the tool today. The IT planning workshops are the core component of this program, and that's where we bring organisations together to develop their IT improvement plan and help them think through what their priorities are and what to do first, second, third and fourth. Throughout the next 3 months, we're also going to be running webinars on technical components and topics of interest, and we encourage anyone to attend those webinars if they feel that might be of interest to them. Some of the webinars, for instance, some of the people on the call today might be social media experts, so you don't need to go to that webinar. Others might have already made a decision based on cloud or infrastructure, so maybe it's not important to go to that webinar, but other webinars on particular case management tools, etc., might be very relevant to you. So we're using the webinar platform again to give it as much, allow as many people as possible to attend and upskill themselves in terms of the key technologies and options that they need to think about as part of this process. Again, there'll be more and more online resources available on Improve IT. At last count, I think we had more than 50 separate topics covered, and there's a range of resources also currently under development specifically for this project. Also mentoring and support to help you finalise and guide you through the implementation of your IT improvement plan, and so that's effectively the core process. Register, online self-assessment, IT planning workshop, attend webinars where they're relevant on key topics to upskill yourself, leverage the online resources, finalise your IT plan, and then implement it if you wish with mentoring and support. So, those that attended yesterday will have seen this slide, but just a quick reminder, if you do not have an IT plan, you are 3 times more likely to rate your IT capability as either basic or challenged. Those that have an IT plan in place are far more likely to rate their IT capability as either functional or leading. And so that's one of the reasons. This is a data from about 600 non-profits that we survey that we did in conjunction with Connecting Up last year, or early this year we released the results. And so the evidence shows that an IT plan makes a huge difference to helping non-profits get the technology that they require to support their organisation. When we think about an IT plan and what's a priority, we use the digital capability framework that you can see on your screen at the moment. The digital capability framework thinks about what are people's technology capability in terms of 6 different capability areas: governance, planning and management, common IT platforms and collaboration tools, client information and service delivery systems, social media, marketing and public website, staff and volunteer skills and culture, risk management and disaster recovery. And the self-assessment tool, which you'll see in about 5 minutes, provides people with the opportunity to understand where they are in this framework and from a capability perspective against each of these 6 areas, from the starting out through basic, through intermediate, through to the advanced level. And you can see some summary descriptions in each of against each of those different levels in each of the different categories. One of the things that we often get asked is, so where do we need to aim for in the capability framework? You know, if I'm at the basic level, am I ready for the NDIS? Will my organisation, you know, be well supported with a good technology basis? Do I need to target the advanced, or is a starting out more appropriate? And what we've found in our work with disability service providers is that in almost all of those 6 areas, most organisations really need to be targeting that intermediate level of capability against each of those areas. And so the self-assessment will help identify where you are, and then keeping in mind that for most organisations, intermediate is or better is a key target to ensure that your organisation has the technology support it needs to be able to work effectively within an NDIS environment so that staff have accurate information on their clients, easily accessible. You can invoice accurately through to NDIA and attract and retain potential new clients or services. So that's the digital capability framework, and from an NDIS readiness perspective, most organisations really are looking at targeting the intermediate level or better on each of those different areas. We often get asked, so if that's where we need to target, how do I compare to other organisations? And I'll come to that on the next slide, because I just wanted to talk a little bit about, in each of those 6 capability areas, there are some key benefits to support organisations as they ratchet up the capability scale. And these benefits are often useful in terms of thinking about which element do we target first, and which of the different areas should I focus on as an immediate priority versus what can I do later. So if you're worried about the value you get from your technology, you probably should be focusing quite heavily on your governance, planning and management to, as you'll see on the right-hand side there, maximise the impact from your technology investment. If your staff are reporting they can't collaborate easily, they can't access information where they need to when they're out of the office, potentially you need to be targeting the common IT platforms or collaboration tools. Again, if reporting through to NDIA or your funders is a key challenge, and if you're struggling to articulate and measure those client outcomes, then potentially your client information and service delivery systems are the core target area for you. Whereas if you're you're not always attracting new funds or clients, then potentially your social media marketing and public website, your online presence really might be a focus area for you as a first priority in your IT plan. Of course, it's no use having great technology, but having staff that are uncomfortable using it because they're more familiar working with paper-based systems, and that's why sort of staff and volunteer skills and culture might be a target area if productivity with technology systems is a challenge. And again, one of the things we often find is that in the move to an NDIS style environment, technology becomes a lot more important to the organisation, and so if you are having service interruptions, let's say to from your servers or your systems, then potentially your risk management and disaster recovery might be a focus area. So as I said, I wanted to just touch base on where other organisations are at in terms of preparation for the working within an NDIS environment. And Info Exchange was fortunate enough to have worked with a number of disability service providers within the Barwon pilot region, and in the very early stages when they were just starting to think about how do I evolve myself to be ready, this is where they were at. All right, so you can see here the median in each of those 6 categories is shown by the vertical line, whereas the horizontal dash shows where the middle 50%. So that's where most organisations sort of sat in terms of capability. So most organisations were around about the basic level of IT capability in governance, planning and management. A number of organisations were moving up into the intermediate level with the common IT platforms and collaboration tools, but still the median or the average was back down at that basic level. Client information and service delivery systems, this was a core area, as we're hearing it is today in Barwon. This was a core challenge for organisations about how do I get the right system to store information about my clients and make sure I can provide the information I need to NDIA for accurate, to get paid on time and accurately. And as you can see there, most organisations were down at the basic level. We're at the basic level again, with a reasonably wide spread, almost down to starting out and almost up to intermediate. Social media, marketing and public website, that was the lowest of the 6, which is natural considering where organisations came from, but many organisations said that that was a priority area for them to make sure they can attract and retain new clients into the future. Staff and volunteer skills and culture, risk management and disaster recovery. Again, both around the basic level, but with big variances in terms of where people are at, particularly in the risk management and disaster recovery space.
So what we might do now, just for a second, if I might just open up the phone line for questions. So we'll just take a brief pause, and if anyone has any questions, feel free to call them out now. Okay, if there's no questions, someone got a question? No, that's fine. If there's no questions, we will give everyone another opportunity at the end, or even in a few slides' time. And there's also, feel free to use the chat function to add any questions throughout the whole session. So I'll pop everyone back on mute and hand back to Marcus.
Thanks, Matt. So, as I mentioned earlier, shortly after registering for an IT planning workshop, you will receive a link to complete a digital capability assessment. The assessment identifies your capability across the 6 areas, and in order to make the workshop productive for everyone, everyone attending a workshop must complete the self-assessment and bring the results through to the workshop. I'm just going to bring up the self-assessment tool and just walk you through it relatively quickly. So this is the landing page, which just provides everyone with a little bit more detail. You can see here it takes most people 15 to 20 minutes to complete, and that assumes that you have collected some information previously, and you can see I'm just showing that towards the bottom part of the screen. That's information about your organisation last financial year, operating expense, number of staff, technology spend, number of PCs, etc. And we encourage people to collect that prior to starting the process, just to make it as quick as possible. If that's a problem, you can always stop at any time, which I'll show in a second, and come back to it. If there's any questions or issues, the improveIT@infoexchange.org email address is available to everyone, so that we can get back to you with and answer any questions or assist you in any way that you might need to. So just quickly showing you the type of information we're expecting in the survey. And so you can see here, the first screen is very much around what type of information about you and your organisation, the types of services you're providing, as well as whether you're state-focused, regional, and some information around how many staff and how many, what your annual operating expense is as an organisation, and what stage you're at from the perspective of thinking about an NDIS environment. So some organisations that we work with already have a proportion of their services are in an NDIS funded. For others, it's 0%. So we just wanted to understand that so we can think about how to help people most effectively. On the second page, we ask again, where are you from an overall technology environment perspective? We ask about your overall satisfaction, your IT spend last financial year, and we do ask, if it's possible, but this is not mandatory, to break that down into different areas. So what do you spend on infrastructure? What do you spend on personal computers? What did you spend on external IT support? What did you spend on website and core applications? That does include your case management and finance system, if you have a case management system, as well as what you spent on things like external data links. You'll see down the bottom if what the list of the things that you've added doesn't actually add up to what you've said you spend on IT up the top here. In question 17, it gives you a little reminder saying that by our calculations, the two numbers don't add up, and so that's just a check to make sure that everything is going to add up correctly. So that's the next bit of information that we're asking about in terms of what cost information and what spend you're actually spending on technology as well as staff, and then we drill into a number of statements around your governance, planning and management, which we ask you to think about and either say you agree, either you disagree completely with that statement, you somewhat agree, so it's sort of a little bit right but not very right, you mostly agree but you don't completely agree with that statement for your organisation, or you completely agree. For some it may be not applicable, and so you can also click not applicable there. So as an example, our organisation understands how much we spend on IT broken down into key areas such as website, PCs, servers, support, internet, phone lines, etc. And an organisation that I was working with last week, for them that was a somewhat agree. They could get a simple report out of the finance system on how much they spend, but there was really no detail in terms of what they could break it down into. It was really just two or three line items, salaries, capital expense, operating expenses on IT, and no detail underneath that. So they said somewhat agree. Again, we're confident we get value for money from the money we spend on IT. The organisation I was working with last week completely agreed with that. They were very comfortable, they got real value for money, they made sure that everything worked really well, but also that they didn't spend anything that they didn't have to. And so again, what we ask is that you go through and complete these questions. It's just a simple radio box or radio button so that you can complete the questions. A range of questions. The third page is on your IT platform and collaboration tools. This is where we ask about your PCs and your infrastructure. Then we ask about your client information and service delivery systems. So you can see here some organisations are using paper and or Microsoft Word and Excel. Others are using one of the other many systems that are available in the Australian market to support disability service providers. There's also a spot if you are if you're using a system that's not in the list, to just add down the bottom there as well. Questions on how happy you are with that system to support you, as well as what you primarily use to manage your organisation's finances, and of course areas to provide additional detail if that's important. From the perspective of websites, social media, there's a range of questions around how you work in that space, and as well as your staff and volunteer skills and culture, before a final couple of questions just looking at your risk management and disaster recovery, along with any further comments about the survey. We always love to hear if people struggled with certain questions or want to provide us some feedback or have specific comments around why they've answered things the way they have, so that they can do that on that last page there. Before you go to the last page, which is when you get that capability assessment. So you can see here just a little in your organisation's capability is shown across those 6 key areas. As I said earlier, most organisations are aiming for an intermediate level in each area to operate effectively in an NDIS environment, and that's what we find is right for most. It's not right for everyone. Everyone's a little individual, but for most, that's really the target that organisations are aiming for. I think social media marketing and public website people, some organisations are not feeling that that's not as high a priority for them, but certainly staff and volunteer skills and culture, risk management, etc. is key. The other information we provide is we just do some quick calculations on your IT spend and your full-time employees, and we provide that back to you, as well as with some information from that survey that I spoke about earlier, where it was identifying that Australian non-profits spend about $4,300 per FTE. We do ask that everyone brings a printout of their results, and this will actually be emailed to you in a PDF, so you don't need to print this web page. As it says, this will be emailed to you so that you can have a record of it and bring it printed easily and bring it. It's much easier to print a PDF than actually print a HTML page. The other thing that, if you're looking at things and going, oh, look, I'm completely wrong, you also have the opportunity either to use the back button and go back and change it and then get a new result. You'll get emailed a new PDF with your results, or the email that you get with your PDF also includes a link, so you can update your results if you need to at a later point in time. The save and continue later feature also allows you, if you're only a quarter of the way through the survey, to, and you've been interrupted because you've got a more pressing issue, to put in your email address, and again you get sent a link to the survey, so that you can then come back to that as time permits. They're the key elements of the survey that I wanted to cover. Before I go back to the rest of the presentation, Matt, I might just check in with you and see, was there any other questions from people?
Yeah, there's no questions on the chat forum, but I will open it up just for another minute. Just also one comment about the link. So if you have registered for the Tasmanian workshops or Adelaide workshops already, you won't have received your link yet, but you will in the next day or so. And then moving forward, everyone will make sure that we send you the link straight away so that you can have, a few days at least to get this completed before the workshop. All right, last chance for questions.
Thanks, Matt. We're not far from the end, so we'll keep going, and there'll be another slot at the end. So, as I said, just reiterating, everyone attending the workshop must complete a self-assessment and bring those results to the workshop, because that's going to save us a lot of time and start that planning process. What are we going to cover in the workshop? Glad you asked. The topics in the workshop that we're going to cover is, first of all, let's talk about the core technology challenges and aspects for organisations working within the NDIS space. We're going to, based on the survey, we're going to talk about that assessment that you've done, and then talk about, so what's the priority for your organisation? And that's a very individual conversation, so we're going to work through that. We're going to explore some of the technology governance tips and tricks, because what we do find is that, to get yourself off the technology roller coaster of I've spent some money and got good systems through to I've spent nothing for 2 years and everything's a problem again, we need to just talk about technology governance, budgeting, how we establish ourselves for long-term success, so that you don't do something and then 2 to 3 years downstream you've then got challenges again. One of the things that a lot of people are asking us about is, so there's a lot of sort of hype about cloud, and there has been for a few years. Is it still hype? Should I continue to to work with local servers? Is a mixed environment right? How should that work? So we're going to talk about that and help organisations to think through that conundrum and what might be right for their organisation. Because there is no one right answer. It's about, here are the pros and cons, these are the different scenarios, let's talk about that. There's a range of cloud platforms and tools that are available at a very cost-effective price to non-profits that have become, become available in the last sort of 12 months. So we want to talk a bit about those, because one of the things we find is absolutely critical is picking systems that don't cost too much, because at the end of the day, every dollar you spend on technology is another dollar you're not spending on service delivery and supporting people with a disability. So we're always very conscious of technology spend. It's really got to earn its keep. Then last but certainly not least, we're going to cover a whole host of resources and key information sheets that will help you continue down that journey. As I mentioned earlier, the workshop will help you to identify your key improvement priorities. So coming out of the workshop, you'll have the broad framework of your improvement plan. You'll identify some core projects that need to be driven forward and gain support for. But there's also a range of things that's really important to do after the workshop. And the types of things and we'll be talking through this in more detail, but just so that you start to understand the process. After the workshop, many organisations will need to gather some further feedback from staff and management on their IT priorities to make sure that they understand what's important and take that into consideration. Develop the details of the projects, that's cost, benefits, timelines, resources, all those sorts of things. We'll make a start on that, but there's usually more homework to do. Gain support is an obvious but essential activity with your IT plan or IT strategy, so that you can then finalise and get budgetary and resource approval. Then obviously it's implementing the plan, improving your IT environment so you can thrive within the NDIS. When we've worked with other organisations, here are some of the types of opportunities that organisations have said, this is really what we need to do. These are the things that are a priority for us in moving forward within an NDIS environment. Governance, planning and management, find increased board IT experience or find an IT advisor. Common IT platforms and collaboration tools, upgrade the email or file server, migrate to the cloud, upgrade the finance system. There's some of the core things that start to come out in the common platform and collaboration tools. Client information, a large proportion of organisations, in excess of 90% that we've worked with that are moving into an NDIS environment, either select a new client management system or roll out their existing client management system, client information and management system across the organisation and actually get it working well. So that's often a very big focus for organisations. Online presence, improve your website, social media, staff and volunteer skills and culture is often a real challenge for organisations because in moving to an NDIS environment, if you are implementing a client information management system or case management system, often you may be one of those organisations that will expect a lot more staff to work with computers and to work with computers each day, whether that's to provide information around how much time you spent with which client, so that for accurate NDIA invoicing and delivery of the core information so that you can get paid in a timely manner. But using computers, if you have a reasonable proportion that are moving to doing that more regularly, that their skills and their comfort using technology is something that we often find needs to be a focus of, or the client management system project has a few wobbles in the implementation phase. Lastly, risk management and DR. We find a number of organisations realise that for the new systems they're putting in place, they really need a new support provider, or they need to think more, more closely about their IT policies and what it's okay to do and what it's not okay to do, and ensure they have appropriate backup and recovery procedures. So that's pretty much it for today's webinar. From a next steps perspective, if you are in Tassie, I really look forward to seeing you either on the 2nd of December in Hobart or the 3rd of December in Launceston, where we're going to go through that IT planning workshop and help you to identify those key elements. If you're in one of the other states, and there are a few, please submit an expression of interest for the program. NDIS will then notify you of when the events in your state are confirmed. Adelaide is I think pretty much now locked in for the 15th of December, and other states will be February through to April. If you have any questions, your local NDIS state contact can assist, and Brian Kirk, who's manager and the person leading this program of work, is also available to assist if you have any queries. So that's it from me today. I will open up, Matt, if you can just open up one last time and see whether anyone's got any last minute questions and has a desire to speak or chat in the webinar. Otherwise, we might bring it to a close and give people a couple of minutes back in their day.
All right. So, yeah, feel free to call out any questions now. Is there anyone on the line who is actually attending the Hobart and Launceston sessions? Okay. Well, if there's no questions, feel free to contact us through that Improve IT email address. And we look forward to seeing your registrations and your expression of interests come through. So if yeah, there's nothing else, we might finalise that for today. Okay, thanks everyone. I look forward to seeing you at a workshop.